3, 2, 1. Stop testing. 3, 2, 1. Stop nuclear testing. How's the sound, person? All right. Glad to hear that. Have we stopped nuclear testing? We have? Okay. Hi, my name's Jose, and I want to welcome you to Politically Correct Cooking, a show that combines the art of the kitchen with conversation. Our guest today, very important show, very important guest, because every time you open up the newspaper, it seems there's the subject of Korea staring you in the face. North Korea has the bomb. There's new leadership going on. There's always something going on about Korea. We want to discuss it with you because it's important. In order for people to make rational judgments about subject matter, they have to be informed. Our guests today, they're going to inform you. Please welcome from Young Koreans United, Jin-Suk Lee and Kyung Lin. Come on down. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Fine. Good to see you.
How you doing?
Glad to have you on the show. Well, as you know, Korea's in the news. There's a lot of stuff going on. It seems that a lot of people in the United States not really aware of Korea. For example, I'm always wondering, does North Korea make the Hyundai and South Korea make the bomb, or is it the other way around? I'm hoping you'll be here to kind of settle all this for us. I know that Korean War, 2 or 3 million Koreans were killed. 3 million, maybe, 40, 50,000 American troops were killed during that conflict. Very 2-year conflict, short conflict. A lot of stuff is going on. There's still, 50,000 troops in? 38,000 troops in South Korea. We want to find out about, say, the new leadership going on in North Korea. We want to talk to you about Korea so we can have an idea of the background to the news that we're hearing. Now, before we get into all of that, we have a great-looking setup here. What exactly is on the menu?
Well, actually, we're going to make japchae today, and japchae. Japchae, which is a noodle dish. In Korean diet, we usually have basic food of rice, kimchi, and little side dishes. But in special occasions like birthdays or, where you have big families together or guests, then you make this noodle dish called japchae. It's pretty simple, actually.
Great.
So we decided that this is what we're going to make today.
And this is japchae.
It's one of my favorite dishes.
Okay.
It's very tasty.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of Korean food, I love kimchi, nice spicy. Is that pretty much generally the case for Korean food? Pretty much a lot of spices?
It depends on the region you come from. If you go close to the southern region, it becomes spicier and a lot more salty because of the difference in heat conditions, right? And if you go to more the northern part, it's not as salty. But the basic, seasoning that we have is like soy sauce, sesame oil, and then you have hot chilies, like paprika. Those are the basic, seasoning ingredients, and then you use a lot of vegetables.
Good. Well, this show's about vegetable cooking.
Yes, so we remember that.
We're glad you're here.
Okay, so what we're going to do first, I guess, is cook the noodles.
Okay.
So I'll just put the noodles in.
And very healthy, made out of sweet potato starch.
Now, a lot of the food, the best bet to find it would be to go to like a Korean food store, something like that. I know I've been to a number of food stores like that. You go inside, the smells are exotic. It's really interesting, and it's a lot of fun. And folks at home, you can always find some interesting stuff at the local food store. So check it out.
Actually, when we go to the Korean grocery stores nowadays, there's a lot of non-Koreans who go and shop there. Because you have a lot of vegetables, and you have a lot of people who are interested in Korean food. So
good. Now, were you both born in Korea?
Yes.
Yeah. And how long have you been living here in the States?
20 years for me.
And I've only been here like 4 years.
Oh, well, we're glad you're here.
No, I used to live in Canada before.
Okay.
So.
Now, the organization you're with, Young Koreans United, what does that group do? What is its focus in life?
Young Koreans United is an overseas organization. We're a Korean overseas movement organization that works on peace, justice, and reunification issues, sort of Korean issues as well as Korean American issues. And we have worked a lot in Korean issues and issues such as human rights, peace and justice issues, and reunification issues. We are a national organization. We have 6 chapters in the United States. Our national office is in Washington, D.C., like many organizations have their offices
Right.
in Washington, D.C. But our biggest organizations are where the Korean population is its largest, in Los Angeles and in New York. We are also part of an international organization called International Korean Alliance for Peace and Democracy, which consists of Young Koreans United of Canada, the Korea Youth Movement in Australia, and the Korea Coordination of Europe.
Now, the focus of, say, your organization would be to reunite Korea. Would that be like the long-range ultimate goal, or is there some other sorts of goals that you might have?
Sure. I mean, we're always interested in the reunification of our country. As people know, it was divided about 40, 50 years ago. And we want to make sure that the 10 million family members who are separated by the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, get to correspond, get to see one another, and live as one family. And that's not happening, so we want that to happen. And also, we want to see genuine self-determination in Korea. We want, our sticker over there, U.S. troops out of Korea. We want the troops out so that the money spent on the troops will be spent here to deal with domestic conditions.
Right.
And we want the troops out of Korea so that the Koreans have control of their own affairs.
Now, before I ask you about how Korea got divided, how are these noodles doing?
They're doing fine. I think you should start sauteing.
You ready? Well, you guys are in
I'm
charge.
really hungry. I hope you're hungry too.
I'm hungry. Now, Korea was a united country until World War II?
Until right after World War II, 1945. 1945 is a critical year for just about everyone around the world,
Right.
including Koreans. Right before and during World War II, the Japanese colonialized all of Korea, and they basically controlled everything down to what people speak, the language that people speak.
The Japanese were trying to do away with the Korean language, forced everybody to speak Japanese?
Yeah, and basically dislocated lots of Koreans, sent them to Japan
Right.
to serve
There's
in
a
the
big,
industry's mines.
Korean population in Japan.
Yeah,
And then
that-
China, and
Right.
they were conscripted in the military. Women were sent as comfort women, sex
Right.
slaves.
And that's a big issue now.
That's a big issue.
Yeah.
Did Japan recently apologize for that, or because I know they did apologize? Because I know that they had some history books being written, and
Right.
they pretty much had revisionist history, and people were
Right.
trying to set them straight.
But there's a resurgence of nationalists who are saying, Japan was never at fault for what
Right.
happened in World War II. And they're saying that the comfort amendment issue has been distorted in the media.
Right.
So we want to make sure that truth is portrayed.
And truth in media, it's pretty hard to come by, so we're glad you're here on the show. Now,
We're trying to see if this is like, I know it's getting warmer, so we should put this as
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
okay.
But I'm going to drain the noodles.
Okay,
'Cause
I'll
you-
let you do that.
Yeah, these noodles, they don't take that long to cook. So usually it takes about 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, do you need some hot hands there?
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
use this. And what he's doing right now is putting some sesame oil, and then he's going to saute like the vegetables.
Okay.
And I'll have him explain it to
Yeah.
you. Maybe-
So whenever you come over to my home, I'll always
Right.
cook you a healthy meal.
Well,
you know?
you let me cook it for you. Since you're here at my home,
Come on.
making us a little dish.
Maybe next time, but this time we'll just do the sauteing.
Now, we're going to saute onions, carrots, and mushrooms.
Uh-huh.
Do all this together.
Separately at first.
Oh, separately at
and
first?
then combine them all later on.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Onions.
Now, you do a lot of cooking at home, or?
Sure do. In fact, we do a lot of collective cooking. Our friends get together just about every night, and we cook. We have people cooking at different nights, so we cook for a very large number.
Ah.
So we're quite used to cooking.
Well, that's good, because you only have to cook like once a week, and every night you go to some place for a party.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great
Yeah.
deal. They ought to try something like that here in the United States.
Yeah.
So collective cooking. I'll have to remember that.
In fact, that's seems to be the basis of our culture and organizational philosophy that stress on collectivity, the consensus building.
Okay. Now, going back to Korea being split in two, the North went under communism, the South under, I guess, capitalism?
Well,
Or under the U.S. protective umbrella?
it's a lot of people have a very overly simplified version of what happened in Korea. Korea under Japanese colonialism was very violent. There were a lot of people who waged armed struggle to do away with colonialism, and right after World War II, Japan surrendered unconditionally to the United States, and they were forced to leave Korea. Before the armed forces could rally to set up their own government, the U.S. troops basically came into the country, into southern Korea, and the Russians came into northern Korea and took sovereignty away from the people. The Russians left North Korea a year and a half after their coming, but the U.S. Stayed in southern Korea, maintained political, military, and economic control. So in North Korea, the socialists maintained control. In southern Korea, former collaborators under Japanese colonialism basically became lackeys to the U.S. military government, and they were cultivated by the military to make sure that the U.S. policies were implemented. And it was a very violent era.
Now,
it was also a very unstable era.
I can imagine. Now, for example, looking at the planet today in the last couple of years, communism, say in Soviet Union, now it's broken apart. China's going capitalist. However, I guess North Korean socialism, North Korean communism is as strong as ever. It seems that there's a strong leadership there, even though their president, the long-time president, just recently passed away. Communism in North Korea, seems to be very ingrained. Is this part of, say, like when you were talking earlier about communal cooking? Is that could that have something to do with it, or?
Well, I think the whole issue, the thing about North Korea is that very few people know about North Korea, and so whatever information or facts you get about it is sort of diluted, and it's hyped and sensationalized by the United States media, the U.S. government, and whatever. One of the things about in North Korea is that it has this philosophy called japchae, which is self-reliance philosophy, which it looks at in terms of relying on the people and the resources of North Korea and not being dependent upon foreign countries, mainly due to imperialist natures and also the Japanese colonial period. So that's one of the aspects about North Korea that's a bit different than other, I think, communist eras. And the other thing is that, if you hear from the United States government, what you hear is that it's a Stalinist, it's like a Stalinist regime, it's dictatorial, totalitarian. And the reality is, we really don't know that much about it. But I think what we have to look at is, despite the death of Kim Il-sung, we hope that what had preceded before his death, which was steps towards peaceful resolution, toward the nuclear crisis, which was steps to North and South Korea having the first Korea summit ever. Those steps would be continued, and that's what we have to look at, rather than really focusing on does North Korea have the bomb. Is there going to
Those
be...
are just little sidebars that gets people attention away from
the real
main issue.
And I think what we have to look at is what the Korean people want, what the Korean people need, which is a peaceful kind of resolution to what the Korean War. Like you had mentioned the Korean War. There were 3 million Koreans that were killed. There were 56 American soldiers that died.
56,000.
Yeah, 56,000.
Now, this is 3 million Koreans killed during this war. During the Japanese occupation, who knows how many more?
No one knows.
So it's been a period of really a lot of struggle and unrest.
Yeah. But the Korean War has never been resolved either. We have an armistice treaty, but we don't have a peace treaty. Right? And so what we've been asking for is for a peace treaty. Officially, that has to take place in the United Nations. And as we all know, the United Nations, there's a lot of control by the United States and its allies. There hasn't been really any concrete steps since the 70s to really resolve the matter and have a peace treaty. So I think what we have to look at in terms of when you see the Korea in the news, not just looking at the nuclear weapons, not just looking at, what you said, do they have a bomb or not, but looking at what is the historical background to this current crisis. Right?
Now, when Korea was divided, families in North and South were divided. How does one say your mother is in North Korea, you're in South Korea? My understanding is you can't call her on the phone. Can you write letters, or is there like visiting, tourist visa to go up north, or is it pretty much an island?
It's a tragedy, a modern tragedy. No one, neither side can correspond with one another. It's really ironic. South Korea, in recent years, when the Soviet Union was still there, hooked up cable system to contact the Soviet Union, and also linked up some satellite system to correspond with Soviet Union, but never did so with North Korea, when the Koreans are one brethren. There's a thing called the national security law in South Korea, which basically locks up people for wanting to get in touch with their relatives in North Korea.
What kind of penalties? Say, my mom is in Pyongyang, and I send her like a Federal Express package. She gets it. The South Korean police come to my door and say, you've been sending stuff to North Korea. Is it like 6 months? Do I get caned? What happens?
Caned?
I don't think
Okay, good.
you'll get caned in Korea.
No, the point is, it's really harsh. People get from a few years to a lifetime.
Years.
Few years to a lifetime. And there are some incidents, very famous incidents, where this guy was a stamp collector, and he collected a couple of stamps from North Korea. But he was locked up under the pretense that he was benefiting the enemy. He was purchasing stamps so that he was benefiting North Korea, so he was locked up. And another guy was, having a good time, drinking, saying things about this and that, and he was criticizing the South Korean leader, military leader in the 70s, and he was locked up for criticizing the South Korean president, therefore benefiting North Korea.
Right, giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Yeah, but that it still happens nowadays.
Right.
Less blatant, but the mechanism is still there. So anyone with any progressive thinking, any doing dissident activities can be locked up. Very
Now, how are
serious.
those onions coming along? Because I know
No, I have an idea. Why don't we remove this?
you're the cook. You do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
'cause,
I'm just here trying to
it seems to not-
scam a meal off of you all.
It's a good way.
Now, while you're over there doing that,
Yeah.
now these noodles are sweet potato noodles.
Yeah.
Can I try one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
What you have to do is when you rinse it, you also have to rinse it with cold water so that it doesn't stick together. But I mean, these noodles are going to stick together anyways because of the fact that it's sweet potato. It's good. It's good for you. And one thing about Korean
Good for
food
you?
is that it is very nutritious. Our diet has always, been a healthy diet. Unfortunately, with the whole change and with the influx of U.S. kind of companies like you have McDonald's, Wendy's, and
Right.
pizza going into Korea, the diet has changed a lot in Korea. So you have like heart disease.
Heart
you
disease
have,
is starting to make its way in,
yeah,
and colon cancer.
which has never, happened in Korea before.
Well, that's what you get with Western
it has,
culture.
yeah.
What can you say?
But
Western culture, heart disease.
I think we could sort of
Yeah,
start
I
with
think
the
this is
yeah,
about
that's
ready.
done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have to do the onions.
So I can have this
Okay, and I'll just.
cooperative cooking here.
That's, we need more of that.
So, so we know that this is a vegetarian cooking show, so what we did with this particular dish is that we took out 2 ingredients that usually is part of the dish.
Okay.
That's beef and eggs. So
Well,
people who are watching this show who aren't vegetarians, and if they can put little pieces of beef and egg in it, but you don't have to.
The cow and the chicken would prefer you not to do
Right.
that.
So-
So.
I'm vegetarian.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, the good thing about Korean food is that it's very you don't
Sure.
have to have beef. It just tastes. I mean, you don't have to have meat. It tastes
Okay,
as good
great.
just without it.
Now we add a little bit more sesame oil.
Yeah, just a little
Now the
bit.
carrots.
Yeah.
And after that, we do the mushrooms. Then we put everything together. Okay. Now you were mentioning earlier regarding does North Korea have the bomb? And you indicated that that is just like a sideline. I know that North Korea had asked if South Korea had the bomb. They said, well, you can inspect our facilities and we can inspect your facilities. I don't think that was really brought up in say, America, the Western press. What were some of the demands that North Korea might have had, say, on the South and vice versa, that we just are not familiar with here?
Well, some people in the progressive community know that nuclear weapons have been stationed in Korea for decades.
Right. They've been there for a while.
Yeah,
and if not, they're just right off the coast.
Yeah, most likely. And during the Bush administration, in 1991, tactical nuclear weapons were withdrawn from South Korea. But it's the NCND policy, neither confirm, neither deny.
Right.
So we don't know if the nuclear weapons are out. So in 1991 or 2, North Korea said, you guys can inspect our nuclear facilities if we could inspect the U.S. bases in South Korea to see if there are any nuclear weapons there. And there was a whole controversy around it. There was a lot of, give and take between U.S. and North Korea. And later on, the U.S.
Carrots are great.
Sure. The U.S. Wanted to do special inspections of the Yongbyon facilities. North Korea said they were military complexes. The U.S. said that they might be nuclear facilities. So there was a lot of controversy around that. And as for the nuclear bomb, big question, big concern.
This is a big bomb.
It's a big bomb. It could do a lot of injury.
It sure can.
But in the scientific community, there is pretty much a consensus that the North Korean nuclear capability is really crude. It takes many phases to build a bomb. Plutonium, so ingredients, detonation device, test, delivery system. There is consensus that North Koreans have enough plutonium. But in terms of the detonation device, it takes about 3,000 to 4,000 explosions to come up with a workable detonation device. And then delivery system, all really questionable.
Okay, well, I noticed that time is really flying. I was wondering how this was coming along.
We are great.
Great, because we certainly want to try this before we have to go.
Okay, now you've done the carrots.
Okay.
Okay, and now we'll do the mushrooms.
Okay, great.
A little bit of sesame oil.
The thing about the mushrooms is that you should put some soy sauce in it
Okay.
to season it and cook it along with them.
Sounds great.
And this is actually our final step because we've already pre-cooked the spinach.
Let's add that in. We have some spinach here.
Actually, we have to wait that until this is somewhat done.
Okay.
Which, actually, I think we can add the whole ingredients together. Why don't we do that? Okay.
Smells good.
Yeah.
It smells good. I can't wait to try some.
And you have the spinach, so why don't we add some of this?
By the way, japchae means mixed vegetables.
Mixed vegetables, okay.
And then you should
Okay, very colorful.
and add noodles.
All right.
As you can see, the noodles.
Now, I've never encountered sweet potato noodles before, so I was pleasantly surprised with the taste.
I just want to mention one thing, that people have this big question about what's going to happen in North Korea now that President Kim Il-sung died. Is there going to be upheaval up there? But there are some indications that there will be smooth transition in the meantime. Kim Jong-il, who is the son of Kim Il-sung, and who has been groomed into leadership, is about to take control. People don't know about him because he didn't really meet with foreigners.
Right.
But it is known that he has been the party secretary for 20 years.
He seemed like a nice fellow, what I saw with him, meeting with, I guess, Jimmy Carter, and also, the religious person that travels around.
Billy Graham?
Billy Graham. And I know that's, meeting with Jimmy Carter and Billy Graham, you've got to be an okay sort of person.
Actually, Kim Il-sung met with Jimmy Carter and Billy Graham. Kim Jong-un, who was supposedly the new, who will be the successor, he hasn't met with any Western diplomat or the press or anything like that. So because of that, there's all this hype and sensationalism.
What I want to do is, before we wrap up here, Can you let people know how to get in contact with you, say, as an individual, American citizen, seeing what's going on in Korea, not wanting to encourage my government to do anything rash? What can somebody do?
Well, Young Koreans United, we have a lot of events. We have forums, we have projects that we carry on, campaigns like Telegram writing campaign. We had the Washington Post ad campaign. They should call us. Our phone number is 202-296-7798.
Okay.
Also,
and they can get in contact with you, and you can say, thanks for calling. We can help you either put you in contact with the person you need, whatever, and
and
we'll be all
also,
set.
people just want to get information about Korea. They want to know, what's going on there, and they just want to read up on it. They can call Korea Information Resource Center, which is 202-234-KIRC, which
KIRC, Korean
is
Information Resource Center.
Right,
Okay.
234-5477.
Let me try a little bit of this,
Yeah.
because I noticed that the clock on the wall is saying, Jose, it's time
To eat.
to eat.
And then I just want to add that what we did was, aside from adding all the mixed vegetables, we added soy sauce, sesame seed, and some pepper. You're supposed to have.
Okay.
Those are the seniors. These noodles are very long, Jose,
They are long.
as you can
look at
see.
this.
Wow, looks delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, that ought to do it for me.
Yeah, but I just want to mention one thing, that the nuclear issue is still alive. It's in the back burner. We should be really concerned about peaceful resolution of this crisis
Yes, and why don't you have
for the well-being of the Korean people and peace in Northeast Asia.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Politically Correct Cooking Show, I want to thank you all for coming to the show. Learned a
some food.
lot.
Is it good?
Folks at home, these are really long noodles. Thanks for watching. Give these people a call. They can really put you in contact with who you need to talk to. Have a nice day. Thanks again for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Had a good time.
It was
Okay.
fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.